All right, so welcome everyone to our artist talk with Camille Eskell, Frida Kahlo and the Damaged Body. I'm Jennifer Brooks, coordinator of public programs at the Hudson River Museum, and it is my honor to introduce this evening's program. We are so glad you're able to join us tonight for this fabulous presentation that Camille Eskell has prepared for us. Please note that your microphones have been muted upon entry, and you'll be muted for the duration of the program, but you can control your video camera. And should you have any questions or comments, you're invited to type them into the chat, and Sarah Linda and I will moderate them at the conclusion of the presentation during our Q&A. And if you have any technical difficulties during the presentation, let us know in the chat and we'll try to help you if we're able to. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Sarah Linda Lichtblau, the Director of Education at the Hudson River Museum, and she'll welcome tonight's featured artist, Camille Eskell.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and good evening, everyone. And welcome to this compelling artist talk by Camille Eskell about the use of the damaged body as a metaphor in her own work, that of Frida Kahlo and other artists and photographers currently on view at the Hudson River Museum. I've been fascinated by Camille Eskell's profoundly seductive, moving, and mystifying work since it was featured in Gilded Age Glamour, the Neo-Victorians, and was thrilled when it entered the museum's collection. One of those works, Tattooed Lady Coming Up Roses, was the inspiration for tonight's talk, which is generously supported by funds from the Metropolitan New York Library Council through the American Recovery Plan Act. First, a little about this versatile artist. Camille Eskell exhibits her work extensively in solo and group shows throughout the US and abroad, including Mexico and South America. Her work is in numerous public and private collections, including the Hudson River Museum, Chrysler Museum of Art, the Housatonic Museum of Art, and the Islip Art Museum. She received the 2017-18 Artist Fellowship Excellence Award from the Connecticut Office of the Arts, in addition to those in drawing and painting from the New York Foundation for the Arts and the Connecticut Commission on the Arts, respectively. The artist received reviews and features in numerous publications, such as the New York Times, Connecticut Post, the Hartford Courant, Art New England, and the Huffington Post, and online journals, Artspiel, Posit 19, and Anti-Mag. Her residencies include the Weir Farm National Historic Site and the Vermont Studio Center. Eskell holds a Master's of Fine Arts from Queens College, CUNY, and lives and works in the greater New York area. Currently, her work can be seen here at the Hudson River Museum in Cycles of Nature, highlights from the collections of the Hudson River Museum and Art Bridges, in Geographies of the Self at the Longwood Gallery, Bronx Council on the Arts, and Tradition Interrupted, an exhibition touring nationally for 4 years, presently on view at the Marshall M. Fredericks Sculpture Museum, University City, Michigan. Recent shows include her virtual solo show, The Fez as Storyteller, at the Hadassah Brandeis Institute at Brandeis University, group shows, A Cladogram at the Katona Museum of Art, Summer Salon at AHA Fine Art in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and her ongoing inclusion in group shows on Odetta Digital on Artsy. Other notable exhibitions include the solo show, The Fez as Storyteller at the State University of New York at Geneseo, and group shows, Alien Nations at the Coral Gables Museum in Miami. Women's Sphere is Wherever She Makes Good, 6 artists at the Weir Farm National Historic Site in Connecticut, and Between I and Thou at the Hudson Valley MoCA, as well as the Neo-Victorians, contemporary artists take on glamour at the Hudson River Museum. It is now my pleasure to introduce Camille Eskell. Camille.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Sarah Linda. I hope you're not falling asleep after that long bio I sent you.
I said you were versatile, so there you go.
Thank you. I'm going to try and move this. I'm I wonder if I can minimize it. I'm going to try and minimize this. Okay, that's good. All right, hi everyone. Thank you for coming. I was asked again to put together this this talk that shows some connections between my work and Frida Kahlo's, as well as some of the artists that are in the world of Frida right now. And there are some photographs that I've included that are in Frida Kahlo in context also at the Hudson River Museum. So I'm going to just start with just a little background. I think Sarah Linda was really very generous in speaking about my work, but I'm going to just obviously start with Frida Kahlo. And most of you might, I'm hoping that many of you are familiar with her work, which really often deals with the damaged body. Unfortunately, it was an arena that was too familiar to her, as she had suffered with polio as a child that deformed her right leg. And then she was in a horrible bus accident, which left her disabled, unable to have children. And she was just 18 years old. I think something impaled her pelvis. She underwent 32 operations to try and ease the suffering and pain from this accident, but she really did have to endure a lot through her very short life. Frida's self-portraits often express her pain, her distress, and her heartache that she experienced throughout her life. And again, at the end, toward the end of her life, she had to have her right lower leg, the one that had polio, amputated. The gangrene had set in. And then she died shortly after on July 13th, 1954. The official cause was a pulmonary embolism due to pneumonia, but her nurse, apparently from what I was reading, thought that she took her pain pills, an overdose on her pain pills. Apparently she was supposed to take 7. And it seemed that she had taken 11 from what I had read. So there's some thought that she may have just wanted to make an exit after all she's been through. My work examines cultural and family dynamics, and I do share themes with her: vulnerability, struggle, the idea of rebirth, which is we're going to see in some of the work. I also deal with gender relationships and social conventions. And I often use the damaged body as a metaphor to explore themes of duality, transformation, and transcendence. Other correlations, and you'll see them, I've given headings on some of the slides, includes themes of constriction, incapacitation. We'll be talking about some torso forms, references to the spine, and flora and fauna, floral motifs. And then some of these connections are also shared by the artist, as I said, in the world of Frida, and we'll talk about those and examine them as well. So I'm just going to move on now. And here is a famous photograph of Frida by Florence Arquin. And as we said, she underwent numerous operations and medical procedures. She's had to wear an array of orthopedic corsets. And you'll see, I have many images to show you. They're made from steel, plaster, leather, and she decorated them and incorporated them into her artworks. And this photograph is where she's lifting up her blouse and showing you one of her many plaster corsets. I do have a color picture of this later on, which you'll see. Now, this piece is in the show at the Hudson River Museum. I'm hoping this moves. Okay, so the piece on the left is mine, and it's called Tattoo Lady, Coming Up Roses. It's from my truncated series. And it's a three-dimensional sculpture made of a variety of materials. You can read that in the labeling. And the piece next to it on the right is one of Frida's plaster corsets, also decorated by her. And then it made a nice connection between her ideas and my ideas. And we'll start talking about that as we move a little bit forward. This piece of mine is was already referred to. It's now in the Cycles of Nature show, and it's in the permanent collection of the Hudson River Museum. In this piece, what I've done, and in this series, is you're going to see a lot of what I call tattooing, the drawings on top of the surface of the three-dimensional forms. In this case, it's a torso. And I use the two-dimensionality of the drawing, almost like a two-dimensional cover. And the three-dimensionality of the sculpture is what's really happening. That's the reality. And the other one is a mask. The two-dimensionality is a mask. So I use the actual properties of 2 and 3 dimensions as an expressive vehicle. So here we are with the two pieces that are plaster and resin, and I'll move on. I found this shell-like, this is the one she's wearing in the photograph, the one on the right. And this particular corset is shell-like. And you can see on the bottom right that they put it on a little stand, and you can see the back of it, seeing that it looks like a shell. My piece is also shell-like on the left. And this piece is also from the truncated series. It's called Tattooed Lady, Strange Fruit. And it also deals, interestingly enough, if you see the abdominal area, there's some activity there. Hers has to do with her unborn child. I believe she had several miscarriages. And mine has to do with a kind of birth, but it's two-sided. There are lemons and then there are pears. So we'll talk, and with this kind of very ragged or snake-like, I should say, almost like Medusa, brambles. We'll talk about that piece in a little bit. I just want to, okay, here are some images that I found of Frida Kahlo painting her plaster corsets. Juan Guzman is the photographer, and she was posing with her orthopedic corsets. So we have these wonderful images of her. This is not one of the corsets that I have in the presentation, but they have that similarity. They were, of course, communists, so she's got the communist symbol, which she had painted on many of these corsets that she unfortunately had to wear just to keep her spine stable. Here's another corset. This one is plaster, but it's got the straps on it. And it reminded me very much of the piece on the right, which is mine from the Recognition series, 1990. It's a very large piece of mine. It's a drawing on treated paper, I'm sorry. And we have a very large female figure who doesn't recognize her power. And she is in a straitjacket, but again, we have belts. So the idea of belts and the idea of constriction and being, I'll just use the word constriction, is involved in these two pieces. Even though that was something the poor woman had to wear, she was constricted all the time by several things, not only physically. These are some leather corsets, and these were, I believe, in one of the shows. I think these may have been in the Victoria and Albert. I had the good fortune of seeing the first of the Frida Kahlo exhibitions at the Victoria and Albert in London. And they brought it here to the Brooklyn Museum about a year or so later. So these are some of her leather corsets. Again, the one on the left, which almost looks like armor, is reflected in the piece on the right by Kat Riley. And she is one of the artists in the World of Frida. And what Kat has done here is that, again, it looks like a kind of armor that Frida had to wear just to keep herself going, just to keep herself in the fight. It's a very delicate piece, and then she has them surrounded by the flowers so often that we've seen in Frida Kahlo's hair, which she decorates. The piece on the top, which is a wonderful photograph. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Let's see if I can go back. Yes. What a lot of these plastic corsets and her belongings, when she died, Diego Rivera, her husband, the great muralist, demanded and ordered that all her belongings and whatnot be put into one of the bathrooms in the Blue House and sealed. And I think they weren't recovered until 2005, 2006. And that wonderful image of one of her corsets on the wall is very haunting. Indeed, it kind of encapsulates the isolation that she must have felt. Constriction and Hope, again, the idea of constriction. On the right, we have one of her paintings called The Tree of Hope. And she is shown again twice in this artwork. On the right, she's in her full regalia, holding a pink brace, very much like the braces that we just showed you. And her other self is on a gurney with her incisions. Of course, she's dripping blood, one of her many operations. Some of them were great failures. She has a flag that she holds in one of her hands. And the lyrics from that song, it's Tree of Hope, keep firm, very apt in her case. And on the left-hand side, I've compared it with two of the pieces from other of my series. The one on the leftmost one is Rebirth Red, and that is from the Ezekiel Project series. This is in a private collection, and it's a wax crayon on prepared mylar paper. The daffodils, again, we're going to be talking about flowers and florals. The daffodils in this case represent rebirth. So that is one of the meanings of the daffodil flower, rebirth. So a lot of the idea of rebirth, of hope, her also thinking and hoping that she would be reborn into a greater health. And the piece in the middle is from my Living Will series, The No Woman's Land Under Mine. Again, a strong female figure, constricted, with this kind of bevy of flowers and hope on the top, but she's got to get through that cement first. So it's the idea of struggle in a lot of these works, and that's another connecting factor. She also uses biblical references, so do I. On the piece on the left, which is called A Broken Column, which is quite a well-known piece, she has herself opened up, cracked up, and you can see the column is also being fractured and destroyed. It's also cracked. Interestingly enough, I was able to find a photograph of the very corset that she's wearing in this in the painting. And what she also has put in this particular portrait or self-portrait are nails, and you'll see the nails there all over her body, like Saint Sebastian. So Saint Sebastian is a martyr, a Christian martyr who is often depicted shot with arrows and tied to a tree. So she's likening her suffering to that of Saint Sebastian. And the nails are also going down her right leg, and that is the leg, of course, where she had polio and which was damaged when she was a child. So a lot about damage, pain, she's crying. her emotional distress. The one on the right, it's actually, I don't know why I wrote Ezekiel. It's actually about Lazarus. This particular piece, again, is from the truncated series. You'll see it's similar to the other torso. That's because that body that I sculpted, I sculpted that body and I had it cast. And when you have something cast, you can do several different things with it, which is what you're going to see in a couple of the other renditions of the torso. And this one, again, is about awakening. I have a detail of the face that's asleep, that's in place of a breast. And the bindings on this particular sculpture correlate in a way to the bindings that Frida shows in the self-portrait. These bindings, though, are French lace, and that has to do with a family enterprise that I was involved with for about 18 years while I was doing my artwork. I was also involved in working for a family business that imported French lace. Here again, she refers to Saint Sebastian. And this painting that has a couple of different titles. It's known as a few different things. It's called The Little Deer. Sometimes you'll see it as The Wounded Deer. I Am a Poor Little Deer, in 1946. Here she's got herself as a kind of like a sprightly, in a way, deer, but she's, again, attacked with these arrows. And there's also some speculation about the tree in the front. Those the branches that are under her hooves have been likened to the palm fronds put under Jesus' feet when he arrived in Jerusalem. So it's very possible that that image is also representative of her broken limbs, because it's, if you look at the tree in the front, there's branches snapped off of it. On the right, you're going to see a piece by Charles Barth, who's also, again, in the World of Frida show, called The Wounded. And here he refers directly to this image of the wounded deer, Saint Sebastian. And then he's got several other, they look somewhat pre-Columbian, and other kinds of images in the background. And here we, of course, have the skeletons, Day of the Dead kind of reference. So he's put them all together in this very wonderful and active image that expresses her pain. Incapacitation, I use that a lot. Severed legs. On the right, you will see Frida's prosthetic leg with a leather boot. Now, she, unfortunately, toward the end of her life, had to have her leg amputated. Her right leg, which is the one that, as I had said earlier, is the one with polio. So she had a set of boots made. There was a picture of both boots, but I thought this one was a little more clear. This is her prosthetic leg. So she wanted something to, celebrate her love of decoration and to speak about her fancies. And this is the leg that was created for her. On the left is my piece, again, from the truncated series, Tattooed Lady Stance. Of course, stance means to take a stance. Here we've got, again, a wounded, damaged figure whose leg is partly a cane, limping along, trying to be strong, limping along, and wound around with bleeding hearts. And you're going to see bleeding hearts in her work and the work of other artists as we move forward. The piece in the middle is from a more recent series, Don't Stand There Like a Decoration. I put this one in there for the idea of the decoration, because that particular series, I am tapping my culture, where Iraqi Jews from India And there's a lot of emblems and patterning and whatnot. And Frida also, of course, taps her culture. She would wear traditional Mexican dress and, did things with her hair and whatnot. So there's another correlation there in terms of cultural interest. The image on the left is a photograph that when they open the room, a photograph of the bathtub with her crutches. Again, I thought that was a great correlation with this piece, also from the truncated series. There's that torso again, used in a very different fashion. And here, there's some hope here. This is called resurrection. Still doddering, but the legs are now crutches and the feet are moving. And if you can, it's a little hard to see the detail of the feet, but the feet, the images and the flora and fauna on the feet actually look like Hermes sandals, which is, of course, purposeful. All the flowers that I use, again, have meanings of their own. So if I think of an image, which is how I do this, I imagine something. I just want to get clarity on what it is I'm imagining or seeing in my vision and do some research. So I'm working in the right vein, what I think is the right vein. The backbone and the spine, here we go again with the detail of the broken column on the left. I had shown you that image just a few slides ago. The piece next to it is a drawing that's in a private collection from the Ezekiel Project series. I'm just going to say a little bit about the Ezekiel Project because a lot of people don't know what who Ezekiel is. Again, it's a biblical reference. He was a prophet who had a vision. It was basically a resurrection vision of a valley of dry bones that will start coming together and the sinews start appearing, and then the muscles and then the flesh, and these people who were once dead are reborn and can walk again. So that's why I use that. Again, it's about rebirth and reconstitution. And again, a lot of her work has an idea of hope and reconstitution. So those two pieces on the right-hand side do deal with the idea of backbone, strength, bone, being stripped bare, being opened, a wafting, placeless. They don't have a place. And you're going to see some of that in a couple of the slides that are to come. I think she uses something similar to this. This is the skeleton and the heart. Again, the idea of skeleton, a lot of the artists have used skeleton in the World of Frida show. And the one on the left is by one of the artists, Juan Solis. And here he's got the skeleton with the heart. You can see the image of the heart. And almost similar to the woods in the Wounded Deer, the way he's placed these trees, and her also other idea of trees, tree of hope. So he references her again, almost as a martyr in a way, especially with the arms extended like that, like a Jesus figure. My piece is again from the Ezekiel Project series. This is the stripped bare, bare-boned self. And it is returning. It's called Dry Bones Return. That particular nebula is called the Eye of God. And though I don't mean this stuff literally, but it's a kind of return to the self, or to go back and to be reconstructed. Again, Frida on the this was kind of interesting from what I was reading. The painting on the top, you see how she's in the sky with the clouds. That was the reference I was making with the images that I just spoke about in my work with the backbone showing. But she has a skeleton Actually, he's wired with dynamite.
Sideways.
I don't know if you can
Oh,
see it.
sorry.
And then she's got the branches, vines, branches all over her. This one is called the dream, the bed. And the image on the bottom, you're going to see her sitting there. I think she's got she had a lot of animals. She has a goat, little baby goat in her hands, but there's something on top of this bed. This is her bed. And that is the skeleton that you're seeing in this painting. And so she actually did have a skeleton on top of her bed. And I think in one of the conversations that was recorded, Diego was saying something about the skeleton on her bed. And she said that she found it amusing to have the skeleton on her on the top of her bed. And then we see on the right, another artist, Joshua Roman, in the World of Frida, very complex work. Again, he has her attendant shawls. He's actually given her some sort of Baroque collar in terms of, I'm reading that as making her some sort of queen. Some kind, and he's got that with the pearls and some of the other imagery he has as jewelry. But her heart is on fire in this case, alive and on fire. And of course, he's got the flora and fauna behind her. But interestingly enough, he also has some patterning on the face. So I just wanted to point that out because we're going to see some tattooing on faces in the next couple of slides. The painting on the right is the Two Fridas. This was at a time when she and her husband, Diego Rivera, broke up. They divorced. She was pretty distressed at this. And in 39 and 40, they remarried about a year or two later, or a year and a half later. But here she has herself, one traditionally dressed. Her heart is rather ripped open or opened. And the one on the right is her dressing in Tijuana costuming. Apparently, Diego Rivera likes to see her dressed like that. There is the wholeness of her heart. And then the figure on the left, she's cutting that artery. So that artery is almost ribbon-like and is binding these two Fridas together. You can see the detail on the left in the middle there. And one of the artists here called Mona Cliff did Deer Heart, and that is a beaded piece. And again, she's referring to the wounded deer with the antlers, the bleeding heart. Again, putting together some of the emblematic hearts of Frida Kahlo's work. This is a photograph by Nicholas Murray of Frida painting the Two Fridas, the painting I just showed you. Interestingly enough, she had a 10-year affair with this guy. You've seen there are many photographs of her by him, really spectacular ones. Even though he married 4 times, got divorced, married, and whatnot during the time of their affair, when she broke up with Diego, apparently he was quite in love with her. And I think he may have, when I was reading, he may have wanted to marry her, but she remarried Diego Rivera. I think they were kind of inseparable in an odd kind of way because they were both having affairs. And there was it was there was a lot of trouble. It was a troubled marriage, and yet they were very enamored of one another. So Nicholas Murray broke it off. He broke off the affair after she went back to Diego. So here we have ideas of bloodlines and feeding. Again, the artery, the idea of the artery. I just showed you the painting of the Two Fridas had that artery that bound the figures together. Let me just start with the piece on the bottom right. That is, unfortunately, this is 1945. Unfortunately, again, she was in the hospital in bed, and she was quite emaciated. She was not in a good physical health. So what they did was they decided to force feed her. So this is her depiction of their force feeding her. This contraction that she's put together as a force feed is hooked onto her easel, which they constructed for her, and that what she had painted on while she was in bed. So in this feeding tube, she's thrown dead chickens and meat and all kinds of fish and all kinds of disgusting, dead, gross, whatever, and it's stuck into her mouth, and she's got to feed that. Here's the moon and the sun again, which she's used in some of the other artworks that I've shown you already. Up above is Frida painting. That is her easel, so you can see her painting and drawing in bed, and that is the correlation between the two images on the right. My image on the left is called Bloodline, and that is from a series called the Living Will series. This particular series uses a lot of lace. This is quite a large piece. And the piece on the right, meaning the larger piece with the blood bag and the artery-like sinuous decoration, which is ultimately hanging. It's one of those tubes that you get in the blood bag, and it's hanging. If you see the detail in the middle here, it's hanging above her mouth. It's not in her mouth, but it's the idea of feeding. Here she's, again, a powerful woman, but almost like an embryo, meaning helpless in a weird kind of way, asleep. So again, the idea of feeding, the idea of being asleep, arrested. We're going to see the idea of arrested later. More bloodlines, umbilical cords. So the idea of the arteries are also like umbilical cords. And on the middle bottom, we see her with her grandparents and her parents, one of the paintings she did. And this ribbon, like, it's like a ribbon, but it's also like an artery, and it's also like an umbilical cord where she ties all her ancestry together. And that's her as a child in the blue house. On top, again, that's not this painting that she's painting in bed, but it's a similar painting of her family. She's also painting a similar scene, but again, it's not the painting that's directly under it. On the left, I believe she was in Detroit when she was put into the Henry Ford Hospital. I don't know if she had a miscarriage or whatnot. They happened to be in the United States. I think Diego Rivera had a commission, so they were in Detroit. I believe this is during that time, this episode. So she has the fetus, of course, that was never given life, and she's got a lot of other symbols, and she's got her pelvis on the shattered pelvis or the impaled pelvis, and other symbols that she often uses, all coming out of it looks like the abdomen, which we've also talked about. I just put a detail of bloodline here, so you can see this is a lace, and this lace is a very expensive lace, but it also has a floral design. Now, I've covered the floral design with plaster and whatnot. But if you follow this, you're going to see that the tubing becomes what we call re-embroidery. So the lace has, some women have gotten married, may have been wearing a bridal type lace. The lace has cording on it, and that is a decorative embellishment on the lace. And so what I did with the tubing is I created this embellishment to follow the re-embroidery of the lace itself, but also as an artery, as tubing, as feeding. The wheelchair. One of the artists in the show you can see on the right, Marion de la Torre Easthope. did a painting called Frida's Chair, and it is in front of her, one of her easels, the easels at her home that she used to paint at. And on the left, of course, we have Frida, another self-portrait with Dr. Farrell. And in the center, there's the image of, there's the doctor behind her, and she's in the wheelchair. And she owed a lot to a lot of her doctors. I think she had good relations with them. So it's her with the painting on the left in the house. So this, it makes the connection with Marion's piece. And also, I believe that's a heart that she's got on her, that Frida Kahlo has on her lap, an open heart that she's exposed there with this portrait of the doctor, the revered doctor. Nature and hope in life. I touched a little bit upon this. You saw this sculpture before a few slides ago. I'm showing it to you again for the idea of the abdomen and birth. And you can see Frida's painting on the left called Roots. Again, it's coming from the inside of the body. So there's another correlation with that. Again, from some fruit of the earth or leaves or flora and fauna somehow being born. The idea of hope, being eternal. Interestingly enough, in this piece, she also has, I think I counted 13, or there are 13 branches or stems without a leaf. And of course, she has many with the leaf. And these look, again, like very similar to veins. See these kind of tendrils that are coming out of these leaves. And I just wanted to make another correlation between the necklace and brambles that are in these two pieces. This is a very famous self-portrait by Frida Kahlo. And many people have seen this, I'm sure. And here she has a necklace of brambles, like the thorns that were, the crown of thorns that were placed on Jesus' head. Again, the idea of martyrdom. In this case, they're pricking her neck. She's got a dead hummingbird, which has been blackened, hanging around her neck. So there's a lot about death and dying and suffering, obviously, in her work. She does have butterflies. Now that's often the symbol of the soul. I'm not sure in which context she has used the butterflies here. Some other artist uses butterflies later. In my piece around the neck, there are images that recall a Dutch still life, and they often have pears and fruits and whatnot. But in my piece, I peeled the lemon, and I have the pear, looks like it was bitten into, and they're just left hanging there and being damaged and undone. So again, it's a symbol kind of being undone. And of course, the brambles in my piece shoot out of the abdomen, which we had seen in an earlier slide. Again, just more flora and fauna. The piece of the Frida on the right-hand side, thinking about death. Again, we have the concept of death. And in the center of her forehead, as if we're looking in her mind, are a skull and crossbones. And she's put that as a third eye or a chakra on her forehead. And death also, I believe in, if I'm correct, in Mexican culture, signifies birth and new life, not only just leaving. I put a little detail of the skull and crossbones here. I'll get to this in a second. This piece, of course, just reflects the idea of plant life, of the foliage. And this earlier piece of the truncated series called Bed, Tattooed Lady Bed. This is actually covered with a very fine lace that has leaves on it. And then, of course, the leaves that surround it. This piece can actually be laid down on a pedestal for the idea of, I guess, sleep repose, death, rebirth, that kind of thing. The piece in the center, and this is, I made the correlation with the skull and crossbones. That's from my first major series called The Roots of Terror. That's from the 80s. This is in a private collection. But the idea, again, of death visiting. This particular series was about how children experience a raw sense of fear and their projections in terms of their fears. So those are other connections that are made with these images. The piece on the bottom is Artist Hand Relic, and from my For Keepsake series. That is just an accompanying series of the truncated series. It uses a lot of hands. Again, the idea of nature, rebirth, even in this arrested hand that becomes like a branch of a tree, that is in a diorama because it is lifeless. It's on display as a relic. That's why it's called relic. There's still the idea of life and hope maybe somehow, even in its death state, that it might resurge. Frida Kahlo cut off her hair when she broke up with, had the divorce from Diego Rivera. So on the portrait you see on the left, that is her hair she had it braided. So instead of the famous flowers that we see in her hair, she's putting on in this decorative headpiece. What's interesting about this piece, and I've been looking at this, it looks like a necklace, but it almost looks like a shackle around her neck, which very intriguing. And as a correlation, there's a beautiful piece in the center by Katie McCann, and she's got another gorgeous one in the show in red. It's called Frida's Green. So here she has, again, some of her symbols, and of course in the center is a corset and images of Diego and she, and all kinds of other images of flora and fauna, and there's a hummingbird there, and a live hummingbird on the upper right. And the piece of mine that's on the right-hand side is Alive and Buried. Now the image above the three arms facing you is how it normally is shown. It's shown in these little coffin-like diorama cases as a threesome. But the piece on the photograph on the bottom right is just showing you a detail of, again, the use of flora and fauna, the idea of fighting and the idea of giving up or submitting or surrender, with the two hands on either side. Just going to quickly talk about the idea of facial tattoos. The piece on the left of mine is also in the collection of the Hudson River Museum. There's a mouthless face, also asleep, arrested, not quite alive. But even though the figure is mouthless, what's growing are mouths, and they're tattooed on her face. So those are not flowers; those are mouths that are being blooming in a tattoo on her face. And then one of the artists in the show, Karen Provost, used that same idea, the idea of tattooing. You can see through Frida's. On Frida's face. The painting in the middle is actually the painting by Frida Kahlo. That is the painting that Karen Provost bounced off from, so you can see that it's very much attached in iconography to that piece. But she has more ideas of flora and fauna. There's a bird in her piece, and I like the coloring in this piece. It's like an autumn, maybe the autumn of her life. And around her neck again is, again, symbol of the crown of thorns. There is an embryo, image of an embryo and the bleeding heart. So you're going to see repeatedly, these images being used. She has a hand earring on her ear. I'm going to talk about that coming up soon. I think I have it. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I missed it. Let me just see. Yeah, this is the one. These are, again, more florals. Some artists in the show, Betsy Gorman on the left with that beautiful extended headdress on. I think she uses doors and windows and whatnot to paint on. A very beautiful image, lush and full of life. And here's the one in the upper left. I had mentioned it before, uses the butterfly. Now there's a saying, I don't know if you would call it a saying, a quote from Frida Kahlo that she says, "What do I need legs for? I have wings to fly." So that might be a reference to that quote. Again, a lot of flora and fauna and beautiful flowers that she often adorned herself with. The piece on the right, again, is a photograph by Nicholas Murray, again, the man that she was having an affair with for over 10 years. She's had many affairs, so he was just one of them. And she is wearing those hand earrings. Those hand earrings were given to her by Picasso. So what I did was I just put one of the other pieces in from the Keepsake series, a series of hands. These may have been shown at the Hudson River Museum. I think they were in the Victorian show. Again, the idea of the keepsake, dusty, arrested, memento. And when the tops of them have images of the same gesture, but there's actually dried flowers in between the gesture and the glass. Again, dried flowers are often, symbol of the memento, something kept, something old, something that we're dreaming about. And I think this is the last slide. I just want to make sure I'm doing this right. Yeah, I think this one is the last slide. There seems to be a slide missing. Maybe they got mixed up. This is Lace's Confinement. So the painting on the right is a self-portrait from 1948. Of course, she's a woman of sorrows. Here she is crying. She's wearing that typical starch lace Tetuana garb. That thing is called a resplendor around her face. Then there's an image of her in the actual garment. But in the painting, she's very restricted. It's almost like she's held there. And in my artwork from this particular Shadowland series, I used the lace again as enmeshment. So there's an idea of being held or enmeshed in this decorative, lacy web kind of thing. They must have gotten shifted, the slides. Anyway, this is the last slide, and it harkens, or it's, I should say, not harkens, but it correlates with the slide I just talked to you about with the lace. And here she is again, Diego on my mind, self-portrait as a Tuana. And of course, Diego is in her forehead, is a symbol of what's on her mind. And again, she's wearing this, the garment that almost looked like marriage garments to me. And she's got the tendrils, which she often uses almost like, again, vines, or she often used arteries. There's an image of her in the center with this very painting. And the piece on the left is my piece from my current series. This one is called Marriage Turban Fez to Have It to Hold, and it's from the Fez Storyteller series. Here I'm actually using lace. That is a lace mantilla. You can use it for other things, but it's also a bridal mantilla. Here we have from a culture that I closer to my culture is a turban. And that turban is also made up of a Jewish prayer shawl. Actually, that was I scanned my father's Jewish prayer shawl and made it into the design of the turban. And this is about the idea of being married to the family, of being married to a male dominance. I'm not going to go into all the iconography in that piece, but it made, again, a correlation between this outfit that Frida Kahlo is wearing that, again, reminds me of a kind of marriage, a mystical marriage, which they often use in the Catholic Church, and my piece, which is about a psychological marriage. And I think that's it. So let me see if I can stop this share. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Camille. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
And so thorough and fascinating. So now we're going to move into a Q&A portion. So if anyone has any questions, you are welcome to type them into the chat. We find that just kind of keeps it running a little bit smoother rather than if we all speak and ask questions. So I don't see any yet, but in order to give everyone a little bit of time, if you're thinking, I do have a question for you, Camille. And that the strikings between your work and Frida Kahlo's work are really remarkable. And knowing how much Frida's culture and her early life experiences influenced her work, is that similar for you as well? You mentioned a very interesting upbringing, so I'd love if you can speak about that a little bit more.
My grandfathers and my grandfathers are from Kurdistan. You probably all have heard of the Kurds now. All this for the last few years, but they're Jews from that area. And my grandmothers are from Baghdad. So what happened was there was a kind of somewhat of an exodus. The Iraqi Jews started going down to Bombay. They followed one of the very influential Sassoons, the Sassoon family. They went down to Bombay and were very well off. They were in the opium trade and a million other trades. So quite a few thousand Jews, Iraqi Jews, followed and established the third Jewish community in India. India had the Kochini Jews in the south, and they had the B'nai, not the, I think the B'nai Israel. I forgot what their name is. It's escaping me. They were there longer than we were. And then these Iraqi new kids on the block around 1890. So one by one, the families started dispersing when the British left. My father left early because he unfortunately was orphaned. They had a huge family, so they took care of him. But this is a very entrenched kind of culture. They're very entrenched in Judaism, and some of their thinking is very old world. A lot of it is old world. And of course, India is also an ancient culture. So they've got three triple whammies there, especially in terms of gender. And we had no boys in our immediate family, no sons. So just three girls, me being the last one, like who needed that? And so there are there are a lot of correlations. It's a different psychology, I think, because hers is really about physical suffering and the joy she takes in her cultural background. Mine is a combination. It's not that I don't take joy in the background. I think it's fascinating. And I'm very glad that, I was born into it. But there were compromises and issues that one had to deal with. When you deal with an old world or kind of archaic thinking, even though they were modern, modern in a lot of ways, they still had these, generation to generation, it comes out, door for door, it comes out. So I hope that answered your question. I don't
It
know.
did, thank you. No, that added a lot of context. We have some more questions in the chat. Diane asks, what is it about Kahlo that draws you? Are there other artists that have inspired you as much?
That's a very good question. About Kahlo, it's just the way she, well, there's so much about her. First of all, she's an exceedingly powerful and strong woman. I mean, I don't know anybody who could really go through what she went through and triumph in an odd kind of way, the way she did. And she was so broken. Her work is very powerful and very, again, it has to do with metaphor, which interests me, but it also has to do with making something of her sadness. And the other artist who I love, again, a woman, is Louise Bourgeois, who is another one who deals with her agony and her anguish. That's a whole different story. And there are correlations there too, because her family repaired tapestries, and they're French. And they repaired tapestries, and we had this French lace business. So there are all kinds of other correlations, but her work is very really powerful and striking and visceral. So she's another one that I can't say they inspired me, but I see correlations between them. I don't know if anybody inspired me. The only person I can think of inspired me when I was young was Michelangelo. So that actually very much inspired me. But the artists that I really like, a lot of them are female. And I hope that worked out as an answer.
Yes, thank you. We have another one as well. Karen Gallagher asks, was your work directly inspired by Frida's life, or is your work more about the constrictions of women in general?
I would say it's not about Frida's life, because I usually don't do any kind of, I just don't refer to anybody else. They're just correlations, but I'm not an artist that will draw from somebody else. I don't do that. It's more about the constrictions of women in general. Yeah. It's drawn on my experience. And that's reflected out in society. We're all still dealing with it on some level. We have it much better in this country than other countries have. So, but we're all still dealing with it and being recognized, and as full human beings, I suppose. No matter what our, the idea of power for oneself is an important one for me, of being an individual and having a kind of respect. And I don't mean power to wield over people, but self-power. I'm going to call it self-power is of interest to me.
Right, that's wonderful.
Thank you. Are there any other questions that I should be answering?
While we give the audience, thank you so much, audience, for being here, a little bit more time to think, because sometimes things come to people,
Yeah.
once you start talking. But when we first started talking about this program, Camille, the immediate inspiration was your torso series and, Tattooed Lady, Coming Up Roses. And then it was like a Pandora's box that just opened up, and there were so many correlations.
Mm-hmm.
That I was just like dumbfounded. And in looking at the correlations, they permeate your work. I mean, for decades and decades. And I was thinking about your different series and different mediums, and just wondering about your practice, in the sense, like, when you conceive of a series, do you set out to create a series, or does it just kind of organically happen?
I think it's organic. I don't set, it just happened. I think probably whatever the thematically or visually. There's so many things that come to me that they end up being series. As I don't think I start out that way, but now I've been doing that so long that they tend to fall into, they fall into groups, and you're on a certain path with a certain idea and you run with it. And those ideas are coalesce around a certain core of how it's going to look, your medium, that kind of themes, that kind of thing. So I guess one is not enough, like a Lay's potato chip or something.
No,
So,
lucky for us, one has not been enough. So let's see. Thank you for that. The other question, and I before we sign off in a few minutes, is about the use of lace. I mean, you made reference to that as a family business, but the idea, I mean, the way you've used the lace as kind of not just an adornment, but as a prison in a way. I just thought was really fascinating because it's gossamer and yet got incredible power in its in the network. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, but okay. All our lives we were surrounded by this beautiful French lace, and mixed in with stuff from India. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on, and which is, that's very Western, the French lace. We were surrounded by it. My father, when he came to this country, he had a brother here already who came from Iraq. I don't even think he was ever in India. He had a huge family. There were 11 of them. So he ended up working for him in the French lace business, my uncle's business. Then he ended up having it himself. I think the idea of lace is very feminine. And there were 3 girls, my father used to say he was surrounded by women, no men around, but the idea of lace is culturally, or now at least, connected to females, lingerie, seduction, embellishment, fanciful kind of ideas. Sex also. But there's also an idea here that has to do very much with the family psychology. And it has to do with, I'm just going to briefly talk about this. We were 3 sisters. I'm the last one. I'm the only one who worked in that business. He was supporting the other 2. For one reason or another, I don't want to, but whatever it was, I was working and being an artist and working myself, always do this, work myself, double jobs. It's just something that I just can't take. Not that they were takers, there were reasons why, but it was all going to fall to me. There were no sons. And I couldn't let that happen. Now, I'm really talking about 18 years of this stuff. I eventually had to leave. So it became, I'm trying to think of the word. I'm thinking of something that's weighing on you. I'm not getting the word. But it became albatross. That's not exactly what I meant, but a burden. It was a burden. And it was enmeshed, and I had a lot of trouble because we're a very overly close family, which caused a lot of problems. Also, there's all kinds of issues. So it became an enmeshment in a way, but it's also the idea of how, not only enmeshment that way, it's an enmeshment with the idea of how women are looked at, just a variety and many level aspects to what lace can connote. Probably more to that, but I'll have you here till midnight if you if I say any more. So I answered your question, Sarah Linda.
Thank you so much. That's I know as in depth as that was, I have a feeling it was just skimming the surface. But
Nobody wants to hear all
thank you,
that.
Camille. Jennifer, anything else in the chat?
Yes, I see that. Monica asks, will you be having exhibitions of your own work in the area? Do you have gallery representation? Is any of your work for sale? And I will also put your website in the chat for you.
Thank you. All the work is for sale. So absolutely. I think you mentioned the Bronx Museum show, Sarah Linda.
Yeah.
The piece that I had with the legs and the shoes and whatnot, that's in that show. I think I showed it earlier. I don't have gallery representation right now. There is going to be another show at the Katona Museum in Katona, New York, but that's the one that's traveling all around the country till 2024. And I have 2 pieces in that show, and it's supposed to open in the summer. There might be a show at the Westport MoCA. I'm working towards that. That's another group show in June. I think that opens at the end of June. And I'm on Odetta on digital on Artsy. I think she has a show there now, Ellen, right now. And that's all I can think of off the top of my head. But the one that's coming, and the show at the museum.
Right.
The cycles of nature. And but the one that I can think of coming is the one that is the Katona Museum one. It's called Tradition Interrupted. It's a very interesting show.
Wow. That's I think much of this was a great introduction for that theme. So
yeah,
thank you so much, Camille.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has just been amazing. Jennifer, do you have anything? I'm gonna wrap up with some more information.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect place to end. I'm gonna put some information, some links in the chat if anyone would like to check us out. And I think Sarah Linda can send us off.
All right. Well, Camille, once again, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me. I really appreciate it.
It was just so perfect. And it's so great to spend this time with you.
Thank
and
you.
to spend this time with such an appreciative audience. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for spending the evening with us. We'd like to invite you to see many of the works that Camille discussed this evening in the 2 exhibitions at the Hudson River Museum, The World of Frida and Frida Kahlo in Context. They are up through May 22nd. And Cycles of Nature, which features Camille's tattooed lady coming up roses, will remain on view through February 12th, 2023. And we really hope you'll visit the museum to enjoy our upcoming programs, starting this Sunday, May 1st, with Frida's Flowers, Horticulture and Crowns. That's going to be on the afternoon from 1 to 4 p.m., where you can enjoy a botanical tour and a fresh flower crown making workshop. And then on Mother's Day, we have the Ballet Folclórico Mexicana de Nueva York with a free performance in our outdoor amphitheater. That's at 2 p.m. on Sunday, May 8th. And then please, we'd love for you to join us for happy hour from 5 to 8 p.m. on Friday, May 13th at Frida Friday, which we just added to our calendar in response to the tremendous interest in our Frida Kahlo inspired exhibitions. And I invite you to please see our calendar for a complete listing of all our wonderful events. And once again, I would like to thank Camille Eskell for just such an incredible, illuminating and moving presentation. And thank you, Jennifer, for moderating. And thank you to our curator, Laura Vukels, who is here in the audience. And again,
thank you, Laura. I see you.
And thank you, everybody, and hope to see you in person at the museum. Okay. And
Good
again,
night, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Good night.
good
Mhm.
night. Thanks.